Well, good afternoon, everybody. The H1B Guy here, and this afternoon is the H1B Guy Live, a review of the Immigrant Visa Backlog Q&A from the Department of State live stream that occurred yesterday on May 25th at 1 p.m. Eastern, as well as taking your questions. I know there are a lot of questions out there right now around the green card backlog, around the progression of the visa bulletin and the aggressive movement that we heard and talked about from Charlie Oppenheim from the Chats with Charlie. I'm also going to talk about the H1B survey and get into my new affiliation partnership with Mastering College to Career. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't already, to please subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube and like this video so that I can continue to produce more content like this for you. The H1B Guy is proudly sponsored by RecruiterNetworks.com, the smart solution for digital perm ads since 2001, and also by Path to Canada. Path to Canada provides an ideal plan B for high-skilled immigrants currently located in the U.S. whose status may be uncertain. If you're facing an H-1B denial or OPT expiration, don't get caught off guard. Make sure you have a plan B, and Path to Canada is your answer. So just really appreciate all of you who've taken the time here to jump in on the live stream. Gonna just really get right into my review. From the conversation that occurred yesterday, I took a good bit of notes here, and I wanted to kind of go over those notes and some of my discussions around that here live today. So the stream was hosted by Alyssa. We've seen Alyssa before. She hosted the Chats with Charlie episode 2. But we were introduced to Neil Vermillion. Neil is a visa expert, division chief in the visa office and office of field operations. They provide guidance to consulates and embassies around the world. Neil's worked for 4 U.S. presidents and lived and worked in Europe, Asia, Africa, and Australia. In referring to the current immigrant visa backlog, Neil continued to reiterate that this is an unprecedented situation and quite honestly gave a good history of the backlog going back to really last year, which is, visa processing completely shut down, and it wasn't really restarted until July. And a lot of that, going back to Presidential Proclamation 10,014, which we've covered here a good bit, prevented the issuance of travel visas. So those were the first 2 reasons that, the processing was shut down until July. And then Presidential Proclamation 10,014. And then the third reason was the Geographic Proclamation, which is still in effect, just covering 33 different countries. But currently, that's not standing in the way. And as of April 7th, the natural interest determination that was released, helps in terms of eliminating that geographic proclamation over a few of those 33 countries. But it really comes down to the individual circumstances at each consulate. And so I think that's what makes this situation so complicated, is that the U.S. has consulates located around the globe, around the world. And, it really comes down to the individual consulates and the fact that this pandemic still exists. The State Department as a whole is aware of the immigrant visa backlog. They are working to adjudicate as quickly as possible. Neil said something I thought that was very interesting, and he said that that's what they're paid to do and that they need to do the right thing. And then he referenced the executive order that President Biden signed into law, 14012, so 14012, the executive order titled Restoring Faith in Our Legal Immigration. And I think one of the things that we've seen since that has happened is a lot more communication from the Department of State and even, from USCIS, one-way communication. And then in this situation, these live Q&As that they've been doing, two-way communication. And I think what that helps is to bring some of the anxiety down. They continue to reemphasize the need for you to pack your patience. Patience, really hit on over and over. Neil also referenced the travel.state.gov website, and where they are tracking the numbers. And I think that this was kind of the first really eye-opening moment for me, in that there are 481,965 individuals waiting for interviews that are not yet scheduled. So let me repeat that: 481,965 individuals waiting for interviews that have not yet been scheduled. Now, of course, that is a combination of all immigrant visas, right? It's not just the employment-based preferences that we talk about here on this channel, but it is all of them. And that, they are throwing all of their available human resources to support U.S. citizens and then immediate relatives and family-sponsored cases. And so this is where Neil got into kind of the priority matrix. We've heard that from Secretary Ali Mayorkas, talking about the prioritization matrix and how they are going about adjudicating and issuing visas in consulates that are abroad. And so there's a wide variety. They recognize the importance of each category. Specifically, he said that when referring to employment-based preferences, but the pandemic has forced this prioritization framework. So really, it comes down to what is the priority, and the priority of the U.S. government and the law is family reunification. And so I thought that was very telling, and it gave us some insight. And so the priority tiers that were listed started with one, the immediate relative adoption. Age out children was another one, and then special cases. So that's the top tier: immediate relative adoption, age out, and then special instances. Those special instances that were referred to were Iraqi and Afghani individuals. The second priority tier is immediate relatives, spouses, parents, fiancés, and returning residents. So, the top two tiers, pretty straightforward as it relates to, it's really family based, right? And then returning residents. The third tier, now this is where we're talking about all other family, right? And employees of the U.S. government. And then your fourth tier, and this is where we spend the majority of our time talking about here on this channel, are your employment-based preferences and diversity visas. And so then Neil got into diversity visas, specifically talking about the end of the fiscal year by September. DV 2021 award winners have had their appointment, and really unable to process those based on Presidential Proclamation 10,014. But the Kentucky Visa Center, the KCC as they refer to it, is processing, and DV visas, diversity visas, are valued by the Department of State. Reemphasize that point, and going to do as much as they can, but emphasize that they will not be able to meet the 55,000 annual allotment for DV visas. Okay, and that really, the fiscal year numbers, aren't going to be reconsidered. So basically, if they don't get through that 55K, we're talking about, lost diversity visas. The other thing that was mentioned, and this is where we get into what's created some of this immigrant visa backlog, is immigrants and non-immigrants are required to appear in person before a consular, officer, and got into the documents that are required, but also that body language is taken into account as part of the interview. We've known that for a long time. That isn't anything new, but here it is being publicly stated that, consular officers at time of consulate appointments, visa stampings, as we refer to, are meant to read body language. I thought that was very telling. So then Neil got into adjustment of status or employment-based preferences. How long does this process take? And, he punted on the question, really, used a lot of generalities around it, and said that there's so many variables, which I agree with, that it makes it difficult to answer. And that's when we get into a lot of this guesswork. I use plus or minus 4 to 5 months now. Used to be 3. Now we're in the 4 to 5 months range. on, from when, receipt is confirmed. But really, it starts with USCIS, and I think that that's something that we've known all along. And quite frankly, USCIS is experiencing massive delays across all different forms and visa types. Once it's approved by USCIS, then the NVC scheduling, comes down to the particular individual post, meaning the geographic location that the I-45, the adjustment of status, was filed in. Neil did emphasize to make sure that your documentation is complete to try to avoid any requests for evidence. And then the next question was around submitting an EB3 I-485 case in October of 2020. And this is where Neil really just said, just follow the directions. But he did mention something that I thought was really interesting, and it referred to the medicals. And this is where, Department of State is on record now, live on a YouTube stream, of saying that wait to do your medicals. That'll come later in the process. I've advised individuals in the past to consider getting medicals to speed it up, but understand those medicals are good for a 12-month period. So you are playing a little bit of a gambling game. Here we have a visa expert, right? And a chief officer for the Department of State, advising you to wait on your medicals, and really just to follow the directions and guidance that's provided to you. And then getting into, he can't talk about individual cases and instances, and really tried to give more general examples. And really closed out with talking about the backlog being a perfect storm, which we've talked about. COVID created during quarantine, the amount of cases processing that dipped and then spiked. So I agree with him on that assessment. It is a perfect storm, but really now we're bordering on disaster. And can we save a national disaster from a perfect storm? And I think we can, but we've got to have the manpower and the resources to do that. And then the last question I thought that was interesting was around, are medical professionals prioritized under the EB3 category? And that answer was only in very specific instances, maybe due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But really, it's a balancing game that goes on, and there's a lower tier priority. So I thought it was a good chat, a lot of family-based and fiance-based questions, but what it gives you is an insight into, there are 500,000 immigrant visa applicants right now that are waiting for a consulate appointment to be scheduled. And I think that's very telling. I think that that's something that we all can look at and think about how it impacts employment-based visas. As you could see here, I mean, we look at what's the priority. Well, the priority is very, very directly on immediate relatives and family. But I think that's something that we've known. Employment-based preferences are definitely lower on the totem pole. So just wanted to ask you again, if you're currently watching, make sure that you like this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube. Make sure you click the bell for notifications so that you're notified anytime we go live, like I have here this afternoon. If you're looking for ways that you can support the H1B Guy platform, you can do so through the super chat function here on YouTube. Or if you like the content that I create, you can also go to buymeacoffee.com/the H1B Guy. I really appreciate any support that you guys offer to me. Anything that is earned through super chats or through Buy Me a Coffee is invested back into the H1B Guy platform to try to promote and increase the production value of the content that I put out here on this channel. I'm definitely going to take some Q&As. I know we've already got some questions that have come in. If you have more, please be sure to post those questions or comments in the chat. Would love to get to those. I wanted to just do a walkthrough around that. Did any of you out there watch the live stream yesterday? Was it something that that you had an interest in? I mean, again, there were a couple of employment-based questions, diversity, but a lot of it was around F and Ks, it appeared. But I thought it was good. I mean, I think you look at Neil and, his credentials and his expertise, and he referenced Charlie. I mean, I think some very intelligent folks working for the Department of State that are in charge of visa allocation and trying to make sure that we achieve the annual allotments. I think was really cool to hear from him. I would imagine that those probably won't be monthly, but they may do more of those in the future. At least I got that assessment. So I wanted to shift gears a little bit. 2 weeks ago, I had mentioned the H1B survey that I had shared later on Twitter by my friend Dr. Nina Gopalan. And, she's an associate professor and associate director for the Bennett Center for Ethical and Purposeful Leadership, School of Business at the University of Redlands. Dr. Nina is living the H1B life like many of you, and decided that she wanted to do a survey kind of different than anything else that's been done about what your quality of life is like here in the U.S. working under H1B visa. So far, thanks to the many of you that follow me on Twitter and have subscribed to me here on YouTube, there are over 100 participants so far. Thank you so much for those of you who have taken the time to do that. But let's get that number over 200 so that we have a really good data sample. You have until June 4th to do that, and I urge you to do so. There's a link to the survey in the video description here of this live stream. You can also find that on my Twitter feed. I'll try to reshare that again later today, just to remind all of you. But just thank you to everyone who's participated. Dr. Nina reached out to me and let me know that a lot of participants so far, and that she was going to keep it open for about another week or so, and asked that I just mention it to you again here. So let's get this number to 200. And if you have any questions, of course, you can reach out to me directly. Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk about today was yesterday I posted on all my social medias. I had the opportunity to sit down with my good friend Daniel Botero with Mastering College to Career for his podcast, and we discussed how to get hired as an international student. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that, I'd like to ask you, please go ahead and listen to that. As I alluded to further, that yesterday was the beginning of our affiliate partnership, the H1B Guy and Mastering College to Career. Listen, I know a lot of you that watch this are already living and working here in the U.S., but they offer a free, no obligation workshop. And the point here is that if you are graduating college, I know that there are several of you out there who watch here on this channel, or if you have a child, which is probably the majority of you that I know that are out there, and some of you have a child who are graduating college, either now or at some point in the future, I highly advise you and them to attend one of these workshops. They offer an incredible paid service that helps individuals coming out of college really understand what it is like right now to go look for a job and how difficult that can be, whether you're a new grad or you're somebody who's been in the workforce for 25 years. But what they do is they target and work with new graduates. And it's not just STEM, it's really all categories. It's a great service. It's one that I am fully supportive of and how they operate, and they have an extremely high success rate. I also wanted to mention that next Wednesday on June 2nd, at 1 p.m. Eastern, Daniel and I are going to continue the conversation on his LinkedIn feed. So once I have the link for that, I'll be sure to share it. And if you haven't connected with me on LinkedIn and you're someone who's a regular watcher of this channel, I ask you to just, shoot me a LinkedIn connection. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. And then the following week on Wednesday, June the 9th at 1 p.m., Daniel's going to join me here on the H1B Guy YouTube channel for the H1B Guy Presents Live. Daniel Botero, founder of Mastering College to Career, where we're going to take your questions, do a Q&A. We're going to present, from Daniel's mouth to your ears, why you should attend one of these free workshops and why this makes sense for the H1B Guy to be affiliated as a partner with Mastering College to Career. So there is a link to the podcast. That's about 30 minutes in the video description here for the H1B Guy Live today. Is also the link for the workshop registration is also in the video description. Of course, if you have any questions around either of those two, please reach out to me. Would love to hear from you. So I wanted to go ahead and just mention, if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube, and click the bell for notifications so that you're notified anytime we go live like we have here this afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and roll into the Q&A. So now's the time. If you got questions, post them in the chat. I did see, I think Tiger had a question that's not in the chat, but I think it was on the comments in the video before I went live asking me about medicals. I don't have that question specifically in front of me, but I think if we just go back to the advice from Neil Vermillion, which was if you have filed your adjustment of status, it appeared to me that Neil was advising you to wait for communication about your medicals. That's the way I interpreted it, Tiger, based on that live stream from the Department of State yesterday. If you have any questions around that, I would, you can always reach out to me directly, of course. But I think if you go back to, I don't know the exact minute mark, but it was towards the end of the video, probably somewhere between the 35 or 6 minute mark. And he talked about, the question was, I've submitted an EB3 and I-485 for October of 2020. When should I submit my medicals? And really, again, Neil answered, just follow the directions, that the medicals come later in the process. I know some of you that have done that on the front end. And again, as I said, those medicals are good for 12 months. So, kind of hedging your bet, if you will, in that sense. But understand you may be out $250 or so for that medical examination for you and your family and your dependents. Remember that the medicals have to be done by a USCIS approved medical professional. There are lists of those that are out there. So just make sure, that that's one of the things that you take care of. Hey, Kavya, how are you? Hi, can you please share your thoughts about consular processing for green card? What are its pros and cons? For me, I think the pro is that you're based on the individual outpost, right? And their ability to process certain numbers that they have for their specific office. The con, I think, is that you're outside of the US, right? And, getting appointments here in the US and walking through that, to me, that means that you're already in the US and that you're working in the US. So, and also what I've seen, and this is just, to me, kind of my insight, whether it's right or wrong, but it appears to me that most of the consular processing is family-based and relative-based for the most part. It seems to me that a lot of the employment-based work that's done is generally done here, within U.S. borders. But again, when you go back to the reference in Neil Vermillion's live stream, he refers to the KCC, the Kentucky Center, a lot, and talks about how, they really were hit very hard by COVID, and now they are back up and running. They're processing some DVs, but not all. And so this is just where that impact continues to come into play for the pandemic. and how it is, part of the problem that's created these massive delays in the immigrant visa backlog. Not just the green card backlog, but adjustments of status across all visa categories, thus the prioritization matrix, of which now we have a very clear definition of what those tiers are. So, Kavya, thank you for your question. Really appreciate it. Hey, Syed, how are you? Thanks for jumping in. Good to see you today, my friend. Hello, Robert. Good to hear from you again. I'm on EB2 India with a priority date November 2012. Do you think I can file my I-485 this coming October? Yeah, I do. I think you're going to be right in the sweet spot, Syed. Hopefully, final action dates will advance pretty rapidly for you. I think you're going to be in the date of filing category. We're right now, we're at what, December 1st, 2010. You go back to the chats with Charlie, episode 3, and he talks about 3, 5, and 8 month increments that we've seen across the different EB categories. So, again, let's say you've got, between the next 3 bulletins, you could very easily be looking at a year and a half of movement, which is going to get very close for you from a final action date standpoint. Now, if we go back to the dates of filing, specifically the October dates of filing from October 2020, and we're talking about May 15th, 2011. And as Charlie's talked about, by September, final action will meet that. So, are you going to be right there at that line? So hopefully we get a little bit more of an advancement. Dates of filing, of course, in June move forward to August of 2011. So that gives you a little bit more of a push forward, I think. But, these calculations right now, it really comes down to, is it 90 days movement? Is it 200 days movement? Right. And each month it swings forward and it goes back. But I think the thing that no one is really talking about, and this is the get real moment right here. These dates are advancing rapidly based on number usage that's being reported by USCIS in a monthly meeting with the Department of State. But yet there are stories out there of folks that have filed their adjustment of status in October, November, December that still have not received a receipt notice. So what that tells me is that there is no way USCIS is going to be able to process the cases in a manner that sends it to the National Visa Center. Okay. And the reason why I say that is you can quite easily look at the amount of filings that haven't been reported. Now, are we all of the sudden, as Charlie alluded to last year, they ramped up over the summer when he didn't think it was going to happen, and then all of a sudden, June, July, August, we're going to see a very aggressive movement in these receipt notices and the processing of these cases. Because let's be honest, EB2, the largest category for employment-based preferences for permanent for perm labor for green card processing from an employment-based sponsorship standpoint. So to me, yeah, it's great that the Visa Bulletin is advancing the way it is, and that Charlie's out there telling you that he expects more aggressive movement over the next few months. But we continue to hear this theme over and over from the Department of State and from USCIS, blaming the pandemic and their inability to process the amount of cases and adjudicate them that they have. So what that tells me is that this perfect storm is going to continue. You're going to have adjustments of status that are filed that are pending for 6, 8, 9 months, which is where we are right now. So let's think about that. It's crazy, right? That is a national disaster, because what's happening is you're having all of these adjustment of statuses submitted, but yet you're not going to be able to claim the numbers because you can't process them in the fiscal year. So I'm hopeful that that isn't the case. I'm hopeful that over the next 3 months here at USCIS, they can begin to issue these receipts and allocate those numbers. But what they're reporting to the Department of State has to lead Charlie to believe that he can advance these numbers for usage. Because I think that's one of the things to me that's been really impressive about Charlie Oppenheim is how he is trying to utilize the spillover from the family-based preferences into fall downs for EB1 and EB2. And that's great. And he's trying his best to make sure that we're advancing those numbers. But once those adjustment of statuses are filed and they sit and rot at USCIS, then there's a really bigger problem. So, Syed, thanks for your question. I'll keep my fingers crossed for you, man. I think you're really close. So, Watcher, how you doing? Thanks for jumping in the stream. Always nice to see you. Really appreciate your support. Can USCIS allocate GC visa number and issue green card later after 1 or 2 years so that green cards are not wasted from spillover for employment-based category? I think that's what we were just talking about, right? The answer, the way the INA reads, is I don't believe so. It's only the previous year for family-based. Now, the question becomes, is this impact of COVID and the pandemic is going to continue into 2022. So I think that could mean that there could potentially even be more spillover going into fiscal year 2023. I do. I don't know if it'll be 190,000 or excuse me, 150,000, right? The 290,000 that's being predicted for fiscal year 2022. But still, that's 150 unused, right? And as we know, family-based preferences, 226 annual allotment. Any unused can spill over into the employment-based preferences, which then start at EB1 and fall down to EB2, irrespective of your country of origin, simply based on your priority date. So for a year, yes, but for 2, no. That would require an executive order or the INA to be rewritten, I believe. Thanks for jumping in, Watcher. Kavya has another question. Says, hello, sir. Can you please share your thoughts on... Oh, I already answered that question. Sorry, just pulled it up. Again, pros and cons on consular processing for employment-based processes. I'm always going to advise you to be in the U.S., working in the U.S. That, to me, gives you the highest probability of adjudication. Just wanted to ask you again to like this video, subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube, and click the bell for notifications so that you're notified anytime we go live like we have here this afternoon. If you're looking for ways to support the H1B Guy platform, you can do so through the super chat function here on YouTube. And you can also do so through buymeacoffee.com/the H1B Guy. So just really appreciate any support. Anything that is received through those two means are reinvested back into the H1B Guy platform to help improve the technology and quality of the content behind what I do here. So thank you to everyone who has joined in here today. If you have any more questions or comments, I've got a few more. I definitely would like to get to those that you may have. Just love having a chance to talk with you and answer your questions here. So Rashab asks, I have EB2 September 2014 priority date. Do you recommend downgrading to EB3? So I will go back to conversations that I've had starting back in October of 2020 and even the end of September of 2020 after the October visa bulletin came out, Rashab, and that's this. I've advised against the downgrading. From an employer perspective, I feel like if you've earned EB2 status, then I would keep my EB2 status. What's the advantage of downgrading? Well, you could file under the dates of filing, and potentially have an EAD with advanced parole rights. But to me, when I look at, we talk about the spillover and the fall down. Well, if you're an EB2 and the fall down starts to happen and you're EB2 September 2014, those in priority date order are going to receive those fall down numbers. And so to me, I would sit tight. Of course, if your employer is willing to do so, There's been a lot of discussions out there about making sure that you file the downgrade with the original perm labor certification. There's been a lot of back and forth out there around upgrading the I-140 to premium versus not. So again, just making sure that you have a good immigration attorney here, Rashab, and if you are going to do that, that they check every box, dot every I, cross every T. Not that they wouldn't, but that's just my 2 cents. But short answer, I wouldn't recommend it. But I know that there are thousands of you out there who have done it and jumped on this opportunity to do so. And I think when you look at what that's created, it's created more processing delays because of the sheer amount, the thousands of numbers that have come in. But I think, Rashab, you're in this really interesting place, because if you go back to what Charlie's been talking about, which is aggressive movement into the end of this fiscal year and the beginning of next year. So let's say 6 months aggressive movement. All right. What does that mean for somebody like you? If we're in 3, 5, and 8 month increments over the next 6 months, and I think you're going to be on that really interesting line, right, where we're going to be bleeding into 2013-14 dates. How close do we get to the back half of 2014 over the next 6 months if we continue to see these 3 to 5 to 8 months movement? A lot of questions around retrogression and what that's going to look like, as Charlie alluded to, a potential slowdown in the back half of fiscal year 2022. So, of course, I'll be tracking this over the next few months. But, Rashab, you're close. As Neil Vermillion said today or yesterday in his live stream, just be patient. You've been patient for a long time. I'm sure you've been in the U.S. now probably 9 or 10 years, just based on your priority date. So, keep going, keep contributing, keep finding ways to survive until your date comes up for final action. Good luck, Rashab, and if I can help you, please let me know. Hey, Guhan, how are you? I'm on EB3 with priority, also November 12, 2012. Will final action hit for EB3 in the next 3 months? So, Guhan, I think you're kind of on that bubble too, right? And the reason why I say that is let's just do our math. We're talking about 3 months of time for the October 2021 bulletin. If you were to get, let's say 5 months movement over the next 3 months, you're somewhere in 100 and pretty significant. That's 15 months from December of 2010. So that's going to put it somewhere in the beginning of middle of 2012. So I don't think you're going to see it in October, but I think your case, your final action, to me, could be one of these that we see come up in that first quarter of fiscal year 2022. Best guess, maybe your December, November, December timeframe. Again, that's just basing it on if we average 5 months of aggressive forward movement over, the next 4 or 5 months. But again, here you are, November 2012, Guhan. I'm going to say you probably came to the U.S. sometime 2008, 2009, if not before that. I mean, golly, you're going to be, by the time, your date comes current, probably looking at over 3,000 days in the employment-based green card backlog for you, Guhan. Wow. It almost doesn't sound real when I say that here's someone who's been in the U.S., again, I'm assuming 2008, 2009 timeframe, and based on your priority date, you're going to be, once the final action comes up, probably over 3,000 days in the green card backlog. And that's because of your country of birth and the 7% country cap based on the Immigration and Nationality Act. So thanks for jumping in, Guhan. Nice to see you this afternoon. Syed says, my H1B renewal this year happened in just 10 days, but my wife and daughter H4 is still pending. Any update on H4 processing? Yeah, they're definitely working on that. There was the lawsuit recently that that covered it. The Wasden and Benias lawsuit, where they sued the Department of Homeland Security, or filed a lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security. And then the ruling based on that was listed out from USCIS said that they were going to adjudicate H4 and H4 EAD, so spouse and dependents, at the same time, at least for the next 2 years. I believe it was through 2023. And I covered that on the H1B Guy News a week or two ago. But yeah, listen, great news. But again, what it doesn't do is eliminate the fact that, you had 90% of women who hold these H4 EADs either forced to resign, quit, or take a temporary leave of absence because they lost their work authorization. And what's the repercussions for that? There is none for the government. They will prop up and blame the pandemic. And USCIS will say that, this is the perfect storm, kind of the same language that we've seen the Department of State utilize. So this is your 5th H1B renewal in the U.S. since 2004. Syed, that's crazy. That's kind of similar to what I said about Guhan, right? I mean, 2008, you've been in the U.S., so now we're, you're talking 13 plus years. Some of those may have been school and then, going to work and then under H1. But think about that, 5 renewals on H1. So let's just talk about the cost for your employers on that. So, estimated filing fees just to USCIS, not legal fees. I'm not talking about any immigration attorney fees or anything like that. But let's say estimated $2,500 to $3,000 right there. Your 5 renewals in terms of fees that your employer paid to the U.S. government was roughly, $15,000. Okay. And now that isn't accounting for the legal fees, which you double that. And that's your attorney fees that it takes. Generally, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. Again, why are we in these delays? Because the money train. For me, it comes back to what's the reform, what's going to solve this problem. And really, it's a first come, first serve. It's a merit-based point system. Going to continue to talk about that, but it sure feels like that conversation is falling on deaf ears at this point. So, Syed, man, just be patient. Here to help you if I can. You're close. You're really close. And I think the next few months are going to tell us a lot. Just wanted to ask you again, if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube, and click the bell for notifications so you're notified anytime we go live like I have here today. If you're looking for ways to support the H1B Guy channel and the H1B Guy platform, you can do so through the super chat function, as well as go to buymeacoffee.com/the H1B Guy. Hey, Sanjay, how are you? I've been in the U.S. since 2003 with an EB priority date of 2012. Would you recommend downgrading? I'm not a fan of the downgrade, Sanjay. Again, you can hold both an EB2 and an EB3. I think, golly, let's think about this. You came to the U.S. in 2003, I'm assuming, for an advanced education. So let's say, that took you 2 years, 2005, 2006, maybe you continued your education, went under H1B, probably had to leave the country for a period of time, came back in, finally got an employer, where you were providing an extremely high value to, who was willing to sponsor your perm labor back in 2012. So here you are, let's think about that. 2003, so 18 years, you're looking at thousands of days that you've been in the US, scratching and clawing for your permanent residency. That's amazing. It really is. When I read that, I've been in the US since 2003 with an EB, employment-based priority date, of April 2012. Would you recommend downgrading? No, I wouldn't, because again, I think if you look at, let's say, 5 months forward over the next 3 months, and then even if that slows down a little bit in the first quarter of fiscal year 2022, I think you're right in the sweet spot, my friend. Just sit tight. Let's see what things look like over, the July, August timeframe. Again, there is this reoccurring theme and kind of thought out there to go ahead and do the downgrade in advance of the October 2021 visa bulletin. I think if I'm sitting at 2015, 16, 17, that may be more realistic. But for you, again, this is where you sit tight. To me, just sit tight. So let's see. What are the chances of EB3 priority date September 2013 becoming current by the end of this year? So are we talking about the end of fiscal year or the end of the calendar year? I think that's the clarification question here. Kumar, is if we're talking about the end of the fiscal year and whether your final action date will meet the dates of filing, then I think so. I mean, Charlie has alluded to that for EB3, that he expects final action dates to be to meet the dates of filing from the October 2020 visa bulletin, or actually the December one where we had the retrogression. So go back to what's that, May 2014 right now. So May 2014. So that's where, when we get the September bulletin, September 2021 bulletin, the last bulletin of the fiscal year for 2021, the final action should meet the date of filing that's currently listed. So I think you got a great chance. Sounds like you are right there in the sweet spot. The next couple of bulletins should be really telling for you. Of course, I'll be covering them, and just ask you to tune in and keep coming back. Yes, I had on Sanjay on in the U.S. since 2003, but perm labor date not until 2012, and as Sanjay said, I was on H1B since 2006. The good news is there, you met that limit, right? Which is you got right to it, maxed out your 6 years. I'm sure there was some time in and out of the U.S. Unfortunately for you, looks like they got your perm labor filed and I-140 approved in time for you to extend. Hey, Scott, what's up, my good friend? Love you, brother. Appreciate you jumping in today on the stream on your phone with the notification. That's why you got to have that bell clicked, right? Talk to you soon, man. Thanks. Kumar, both. Yeah, again, I think, final action should be right there. That September 2021 bulletin. That should be it, based on everything that Charlie Oppenheim has talked about over the last couple of months. He's reiterated it in the Chats with Charlie episode 2 and episode 3 that he expects final action dates across all employment-based categories to meet the dates of filing that were currently listed. So it says, thanks, Robert. Always feel good to talk to you. Your opinion are better than the attorney sometimes because they're money hungry and you're practical. Listen, I always talk about it. You got to have a good immigration attorney. It isn't about them being money hungry, but that's their job. I'm money hungry too, my friend, just like you are, I'm sure. That's the reiteration of the super chat function multiple times here. But with that being said, you've got to have an immigration attorney that you know and trust. And sometimes your employer just doesn't fully understand the situation. And I think that's what makes my voice so unique, is that I've worked with individuals like you as a moderator and an in-between between immigration attorneys, employer, and you, the employee. And so it allows me to kind of speak in a little bit more of a gray area. The opinions that I give you here today are non-legal. They're for entertainment and personal interest only. But it does allow me to provide a pretty direct opinion. So, thank you for saying that. It means a lot. It lets me know that what I'm doing here is absolutely on the right path. Hey, Rom, how you doing, my good friend? Good to see you. We always talk about processing delays at USCIS, but we don't talk much about the process delays at DOL. Perm prevailing wages take 6 months to approve, and the whole perm process is about a year. That's right. I used to always say 9 to 12 months, but now that number is more like 12 to 18 months. Because between the prevailing wage determinations, between the initiation of it, between the quiet period, between the job applicants, the advertising periods, there are expansive delays. But that's why somebody like RecruiterNetworks.com, who is the smart solution for digital perm ads since 2001, that's why they come in very handy. And so if your employer is looking for ways to help you speed up that process, I highly advise you to reach out to me or reach out to my good friend Richard Allman at RecruiterNetworks.com and tell them the H1B guy sent you, because they can help get your ad out there a lot faster and expedite that process. Because there are many variables, as Neil Vermillion mentioned, along the way that can create delays. And I've seen something that should take 9 months take 18 months in the perm labor certification process. If final action means states filing, how long does it take to get GC after that? Well, I used to say 12 months plus or minus 3. But right now, I think that number, and there's some information out there that's saying anywhere between 9 to 44 months, depending on the individual consulate. Woo, think about that. 9 to 44 months. Whew. So it's a big unknown right now. You can track the cases. That information is out there. It's a really cool source that shows you kind of the individual centers and where they are processing. There's no premium processing concept with DOL, just prevailing wage determination takes 8 months. That's ridiculous. They need to pull the data from the library and just display it. It takes 8 months. Yeah. And again, this is one of the most painful parts of the process, because the requirements have to be very clearly defined. And honestly, they have to be able to understand the category and the level. And then, the metropolitan statistical area plays a huge part in that too. Hey, Darshan, good to see you. Priority date is EB2 2013 November. As per my lawyer recommendation, did not downgrade last year. Yep. And guess what, my friend? I think you're going to reap the benefit of that. I do. Very soon. You've waited patiently. What you haven't been is stuck in this adjustment of status 2020 no man's land with no receipt and no update. So my fingers crossed for you. Hopefully your patience pays off for you big time. Hey, Vinay, very informative sessions. I have priority date of June 2016 on EB3. Is it okay to change jobs at this time? Well, if I were you, Vinay, this is just my 2 cents. I'm hearing a lot of rumblings about 2016 for dates of filing in EB3 for the October 2021 visa bulletin. If that's the case, you don't want to be stuck in a re-perm certification with a new employer, or you make that jump right now and just kind of deal with it after the fact. So those are kind of your 2 options, right? Knowing that if you make this move, you're looking at a re-perm certification, you're looking at probably 18 months before you have that new I-140 with the new perm and the new I-140 with the new employer. Of course, you can port your existing date, but just, This is a tough one, man. I think, you're right there. If you could maybe sit and wait 90 days, unless you've got an offer in hand that you can't say no to, this is where that patience is going to be so critical. When do you think EB2, EB3 data filing will be on October or January 1, 2014 and October 2000 visa bulletin? So I think that the EB3 data filing, it's already May 2014, right? But EB2, again, I think for me, this is exactly the date that I'm looking at, which is December 2013, January 2014 for EB2 dates of filing for that October bulletin. That's just what I'm thinking right now. But again, these next three bulletins, depending on whether we see 3 or 8 months, that's a pretty big variable discrepancy there. That could potentially impact whether this gets closer to that month or not. But right now, just kind of my gut tells me dates of filing for EB2 for India specifically. You're looking at probably December 2013, January 2014. Hey, Mayuri, how are you? Will there be a second round of the H1B lottery this year like it happened last year? Please comment, share your view. Excuse me. So I did a video on this several weeks ago. This is one of the most popular questions I get. In that video, I said I don't think so, but maybe. I've been wrong before, and I could be wrong again. I went through a lot of the reasons why there could and could not be. Of course, we're still working through some of these unprecedented issues as it relates to the electronic filing process. But I think, ultimately the big thing that is interesting here is, the India travel ban and the COVID outbreak and what its impact is going to be, because, you go back to that April 1st to the end of June, that 90-day window that petitioners have to file on a beneficiary's behalf. If there is going to be one, that will be something that we'll know by the end of July, beginning of August. And if there is, again, I think you're only looking at about 2,000 to 5,000 as my range. As I've previously reported, the number that's been reported is 308,000 electronic petitions were received for 85,000 cases, putting that somewhere below 27% likelihood. Now, if you're talking about maybe 100 plus thousand, if not more, that would go into that second, those percentages of being selected are very minimal. So the likelihood here is minimal, but you could be in that few percent range that gets lucky. But right now, I still am going to say I don't think so, but maybe. And if there is, there will be roughly 2 to 5K that would be reissued sometime in August and selected with a 90-day window that would put it through November for the petition to be filed. Hey, Avinash, how are you? When do you project the PD for October 2017, EB3 to be current, looking to change jobs? I think you can go ahead and do that now. I don't think we're going to see 2017 for EB3, at least this year. I think that's going to be a 2023, maybe 2024. Again, I think when we look at this advancement and this aggressive movement, we've seen the national disaster that we're facing is if USCIS can process these numbers. And right now, my confidence is starting to wane that they can't. But hopefully, as Charlie mentioned, there's a big push in June, July, and August to make sure these numbers are utilized as much as the 2020, which was up to 90%. But now we're talking about 262,000. Again, I don't think that they're going to get through all of those, but I hope that they do. But Avinash, if you are going to change jobs, I want to reiterate to you, make sure that this is negotiated on the front end, that they're willing to initiate your perm labor as soon as you join, because the more time that goes into that, The more delays that happen there, the more likelihood it's going to create some anxiety for you as that date pushes out. Again, and we've talked about this before, you have 12 months from when your final action date is current for you to file your adjustment of status, roughly. So just keep that in mind as you work through that process. Well, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's taken the time here to post your questions and comments. I hope you find these sessions informational at best and interesting at the very least. I really enjoy these live sessions. I enjoy interacting with all of you on a daily basis. So just thank you to all of you who continue to reach out to me and ask me questions, and how I can help you. Hey, Kacha, how are you? My EB2 to EB3 downgrade was filed last year, November 1st week, 2020. While I received the receipt notice of the downgrade, the petition has not yet been approved. Yeah. What I would do, let's see, you got another comment here. My date will mostly be current in August, September. My PD is June 2013. What happens when the date becomes current, given that my EB3 has not yet been approved? Yeah, I've seen some questions around this. I think for you, ultimately I would go back to the date of that receipt and calculate roughly 18 months, right? Because that was filed in regular. I'm assuming kind of simultaneously there. I've seen this question come up, but there's a mixed recommendation out there to upgrade to premium versus not. I think if I'm you, this is one of those questions where I'm going to go back to the attorney and tell them, listen, I've been tracking these dates and I have a good feeling that, my date's going to be current, right? By this point for final action. The good news for you is that, once your final action is current, as I said, you have 12 months. So just keep that in mind as you seek your legal counsel advice here. And this is one of the reasons why I advise so many of you, if you go back and look at my conversations in October around this, where I advised several of my personal friends who were holding 11, 12, and 13 priority dates to sit tight and not do this downgrade, because, your exact reason right here. And while the downgrade, you got to take the chance, right? I understand that risk. Now here it's creating problems for you because USCIS can't adjudicate the cases fast enough. And I think that story, that perfect storm story, continues to be a continuing message as it relates to all of the different visa processings and adjudications for USCIS, not just our own little bubble of employment-based preferences and non-immigrant visa benefits that we talk about. So thanks for the question. Really appreciate that. I just wanted to remind everyone that today's live stream was brought to you by RecruiterNetworks.com, the smart solution for digital perm ads since 2001. This national job board network provides recruitment websites in 1,024 major U.S. metro areas. Each local job board is its own portal and is a low-cost resource for immigration recruitment ads for all industries and professions with a flat price of $225 per ad, regardless of which city you choose. RecruiterNetworks.com has been the #1 place for immigration attorneys, immigration ad agencies, and employers to meet the DOL requirements for the digital portion of the perm advertisement rules. RecruiterNetworks.com. Tell them the H1B guy sent you. As I mentioned earlier, if you're looking for ways to speed up your perm labor process, talk to your attorney. Tell them to reach out to Richard Allman at Recruiter Networks to help them with their perm advertising for your job. And this post is also brought to you by Path to Canada. Path to Canada provides an ideal plan B for high-skilled immigrants currently located in the U.S. whose status may be uncertain. If you're facing an H-1B denial or OPT expiration, don't get caught off guard. Make sure you have a plan B, and Path to Canada is your answer. They will help you navigate the process. If you're interested in finding out more, please be sure to click the link in the description below. I had somebody reach out to me today, said that they completed the form and want to know if I could, just make sure that it was received. And so I went in and checked. And just to be sure, if you do that and you need my assistance, feel free to contact me, and I can definitely email your contact information over to Mark Pavlovopoulos at pathtocanada.com and help you, or pathtocanada.ca, excuse me, and help you in that regard. So I wanted to mention just a couple more things. The H1B survey with my friend Dr. Nina Gopalan from the University of Redlands. Please be sure, let's get that number over 200 in terms of participants. I'll reshare that link later today on Twitter. And then if you haven't, give a listen to my podcast with my friend Daniel Patero from Mastering College to Career, where we talked about how to get hired as an international student. Kachal, thank you so much for the super chat. You don't know how much that means to me personally. As I said, any super chats that I receive here are invested back into the H1B Guy platform so that I continue to improve the technology and the content for all of you here. So really appreciate it. I hope my answer helps you. Just be patient. Again, I'd go back to your attorney and I would ask them, hey, I know I can hold EB2, I-140, and EB3, I-140. What happens if my downgrade's still pending and my date comes current? What is my best option there? And they should be able to answer that very quickly for you. So just wanted to ask you again, if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube, and click the bell for notifications so that you're notified anytime we go live like I did here this afternoon. If you've made it this far, and I know there's a handful of you still out there, thank you so much for all of your support and your encouragement. Just really appreciate it, and you taking the time to watch my content. Thank you so much. I'm Robert. I'm the H1B Guy, your global source for all things H1B.